My name is Average Joe, and I'm a proud geek with expertise in movies, superheroes, and animation.
My name is Beef Pork Ribs. I'm a fine repository of esoteric knowledge, which I suppose most people would qualify as geeky. Though I dabble in many fandoms, my main areas of expertise are anime, movies, and Belgian comics, with a strong recent insurgency of D&D.
Our mission is to bring nerd and geek culture to the masses
by sticking it all under the microscope.
Welcome to the Bat Jar Podcast.
Movies, comics, graphic novels, TV, cartoons, animation, nerds are geeks, entertainment culture. Hear it on the Bat Jar, Nerdy Power. Nerds and geeks, come gather around the scene. Come and join us in the Bat Jar. Come and tune into Average Joe and his team. Lots of room here in the Bat Jar. When the newest nerdy news drops, these podcast pals put it under the scope. DC, Marvel, Disney, Star Wars, cinematic, multiverses, mega Christmas, strangest franchise. Hear it on the Bat Jar, Nerdy Power.
Hello there, and welcome to the Bat Jar Podcast, where we put nerd and geek culture under the microscope.
You know, like people are trying to do with COVID-19.
Yes, so this is a historic episode for the Bat Jar Podcast. This is the first one that is being recorded virtually. Ooh. We have reached a point, at least in Canada, where it's just better to be safe than sorry. Beef Pork Ribs and I are now practicing physical distancing. The World Health Organization has asked people to stop calling it social distancing because apparently there's a lot of people out there who they hear the word social distancing and they think they have to be disconnected from other people.
Well, that's unfortunate.
So they're saying practice physical distancing, which is the whole point of like keeping 6 feet or 2 meters apart from you and another human being.
Yeah,
But
because I'm still being relatively social. I mean, a lot of my social interactions were online anyway, so this doesn't change it as much as other people.
Yeah, so Beef Pork Ribs, it's good to at least hear your voice. I haven't seen you since we recorded in person last week.
Yes, we were supposed to have a Dungeons and Dragons session together, but that alas fell through. Or was rescheduled, I believe, to a later date.
That's right. So even though we are recording virtually, this is still the Bat Jar Podcast. So I've got the Bat Jar here, and he's just going to be sitting here kind of staring at me the whole time, so I'm going to put him off to the side here.
I'm going to pretend the Bat Jar is near me. It's near me in spirit.
So, Beef Pork Ribs, how are you doing? How is physical distancing treating you?
Well, physical distancing isn't too bad. There's a few people I'm not really physically distancing because I live around them and see them every day. But the rest of it, it's been not too bad. The hardest thing has been being away from work and then trying to figure out how that's going to work out and doing virtual meetings for the first time with a large number of people who have never done virtual meetings before. So that was an interesting week.
Yeah, I went to a grocery store Friday night, and I actually had to wait in a lineup outside the grocery store to be allowed in because they were only letting so many people into the store at a time. And that was I've never done anything like that before.
No, it wasn't as bad last time I went to a grocery store, which was yesterday. It was a short trip, but they had like tape on the ground to like what distance you should be from the next person in the line at the cash. So I think those are manageable things as well. It's better than having people panic and not know what to do.
Yeah, so of course, welcome to everyone who's listening. Maybe this is your first time interacting with anyone this week. We hope you enjoy this week's episode, and just to know that if you are experiencing any kind of isolation right now, know that well, I can't speak for Beeper, but I am praying for you, and I hope that you're doing okay in the midst of this time of relative uncertainty. Of course, no one really knows how long this time of physical distancing and state of emergency in a lot of places, and we don't know how long this pandemic's going to go on for, but just know you're not alone.
Yeah. Taking it day by day is the advice my brother gave me, and I think it is the best one.
So, of
Reevaluate.
course, yes. So, just again, last thing we'll mention about COVID-19, I got a little flyer in the mail from the federal government basically emphasizing that the way to tell if you're experiencing symptoms of COVID-19 is if you have a fever, if you're having a dry cough, or if you're having trouble breathing. So, if you're experiencing any of those symptoms, I would recommend contacting your local public health agency to inquire about getting tested. And that's the end of our public service announcement. So, moving on, we are in getting towards the end of our Memory Lane series, now talking about the year 2018.
Yes. The
So,
the more this goes on, the more I'm like, I did not remember it was that long ago. No, no. Sorry, I have a kitten who's found my cords to my computer and is trying to bite at them.
so we've got all kinds of guests today. We've got the Bat Jar. I'm drinking in my Bat Jar coffee mug. You've got your kitten. It's a real family show today.
Yeah, the kitten's name is Loki, and it's Mjolnir's kitten, so
Aw.
you can see the continuity of fandom in the things that she enjoys.
So, BPR, what were you doing in 2018? This was only a few years ago, but it's long enough that it's worth, reflecting upon.
I suppose 2018. Uh, well, yeah, 2018, 2019 was last year, so I had moved back here, or was in the process of moving back here, finishing off in Alberta and working full time for a period of 10 months, which at the time was the longest I'd ever done. So it was joining adultish things for me.
Yeah, and I was quite happy to have you back in the same city as me. So that was a highlight of the year for me for sure.
Oh, thanks you. Yeah, it was very good to be back around a lot of friends, and although it was a bit annoying until I got a car because I had to bus quite a long time every day to and from work, but and worked on the evenings on Friday nights, which meant that I wouldn't get home until midnight sometimes, or most times. That was a interesting life.
Yeah, 2018 was a big year for my family because my brother Dan Hatton and his wife had a baby, the first grandchild to my parents, and so I became an uncle that year. My brother became a father. Our family grew to like the next generation, and my little niece, she's very cute. She's my goddaughter, and I love her a lot. And I see her a lot on FaceTime these days. She's old enough that she can actually like hold a smartphone and FaceTime you while parents are doing other things. So it's quite fun. And that if I
Yeah,
had to like think about it, it's probably the most significant thing that happened to me in that year. It even didn't even directly happen to me.
I suppose in 2018 was my sister had her third child, whom I'm not the godfather of, but who is a lovely little boy called Marius, which my sister claims has absolutely nothing to do with Les Mis, but I'm skeptical about it sometimes.
So going on now to some general kind of nerd and geek culture things from 2018. When we spoke last week, we forgot to mention the release of Fortnite, which admittedly is a video game that I don't know how it works, but I do know it's become insanely popular. And the thing that became noteworthy in 2018 is they announced that you could play Fortnite with anyone across any platform.
Oh yeah,
Which
which is kind of, I think it's possibly better to talk about Fortnite this year because when Fortnite came out, I remember when Fortnite originally came out and it was like, oh, this like fun, cool thing that a bunch of streamers played a little bit. I used to watch a lot of League of Legends streamers, and some of them were starting to transition to other games as they were being popular, which was part of why I knew about Cuphead and um, also Undertale. But this was like a lot of people were focused a lot more on the building aspect rather than the battle royale aspect of it in 2017. I feel like it was still kind of indie in 2018 is when it started to get really big. Uh, which of course, yeah, playing across platforms, a lot of people were very excited, especially because you could play off of your tablet as well as a computer or gaming system.
Yeah, because I guess the big thing that we never really discussed with video games is that if you have the PlayStation 4 version of a game and you go online, you're only allowed to play with other people who are on a PlayStation 4. But
Yeah.
with this, I don't know how they did it, but basically Fortnite allowed it so that someone on their Android smartphone could play with someone who was on their PC and another person who was on a Nintendo Switch and another person that was on an Xbox One.
Yeah, never thought about it, but it is pretty impressive. I suppose it is a not simplistic, but simple enough game that they could afford to do it,
Yeah.
but
So
still pretty impressive.
I know our friend Minty Python kind of alluded to the Fortnite dances. So that certainly is probably the only element of this that I think is kind of annoying. I think it's impressive that it became so popular that now I see like Fortnite toys in the stores and like it's certainly
Fortnite
become
Nerf
a,
guns, yeah, it's become crazy.
so I'll give Fortnite the whole kind of phenomenon around it a back cookie.
I I'll give it its explosion in 2018 a bat cookie, but on the whole, I'd probably give it a bat noogie now.
In 2018, there was a bit of interesting news in the anime community. The there was a formal partnership that had been struck a few years prior between Crunchyroll, which is a streaming service dedicated to subtitled anime, and Funimation, one of the largest, well, the largest anime licensor and distributor in the United States. So they created a partnership wherein basically any shows licensed by either company would get a subtitled release on Crunchyroll, and then they would get an English dubbed release on the Funimation streaming service, and then Funimation would do the home video release for both companies. So for fans of anime, it was kind of a win-win because essentially if you liked subtitled anime, you would get more of it available to you on Crunchyroll, and if you were someone like me who typically leaned towards English dubbed anime, you'd get a greater variety of shows dubbed into English. And if you
And
had access to both streaming services, that meant you just had all that much more content.
yeah, although to be fair, it is still very much I find even when talking to people now, the norm is like if you prefer dub, you still have Funimation. If you prefer subs, you have Crunchyroll. But it did used to be a lot better. Although I think at the time I had both subscriptions, so I didn't notice that much.
Well, and this is the news of 2018 is the relationship that they had created a few years prior actually broke down. Funimation had been purchased by Sony, and Crunchyroll's parent company had been purchased by AT&T and Time Warner. So it reached a point where basically the parent companies were competitors, and they said, "Why does this relationship exist where we're benefiting other companies?" And so they tore down the official relationship. So now, I only have Funimation, so there's a lot fewer shows available there to me, and it's just the nature of the beast. It was a nice. I liked that relationship because it allowed anime fans. It just showed like people, the companies were kind of working together to make an overall better experience for the fans. But then the
Yeah,
interest of the parent companies shut it down.
but I do think that the end result of that relationship still was a still is a net positive. Like it was there long enough to get people into anime more and to get anime more into the mainstream, get both of the services, the coverage they needed by working together. I currently still have both, but that's mostly because Mjolnir prefers subs and dubs, and I used to exclusively watch subs, so I had only Crunchyroll until recently. But but I do think like it's a bat noogie that it did break down, but I still think that the effects of it overall are a bat cookie and still hold on today. And is probably one of the reasons Netflix has as much anime as it does was because they're like, oh wow, these services are making it happen. But it is kind of unfortunate that now it's probably going to be a three-way split between the three companies for animes, and who knows, maybe the other streaming sites will get into it a little bit more, but right now it's less so.
I would agree with you. Bat Noogie for the breakdown, but Bat Cookie for the overall impact. In 2018, a Netflix movie won Best Picture at the Oscars, and this is kind of melding the years. The movie was released in 2018, but it won Best Picture at the 2019 Oscars. So I just put it down because it is noteworthy that we reached that point where essentially a film produced by Netflix ended up becoming acknowledged by the formal filmmaking industry as like the best film of the year.
Yeah. Although, let's wait until 2019 and the list of movies to see what it was comparing itself to. Or I suppose it
Well,
would be the ones this year. Let's
yeah,
maybe we can come back to Roma after we go through the movies. I think that might be a good idea.
yeah. So just the
But
very fact that a Netflix movie got nominated, I'll give that a back cookie.
yeah, for sure.
And then just to hit on some things that happened with the Batch Our podcast that year, this was the year that Asian John departed as a regular host. This was the year that Pixel Patch became the full-time host replacing him. And so it was the first real transition of podcast power from one co-host to another.
I do
And
believe it's also the first year I made an appearance on the show. Or was it
that
in
is correct.
2019? No, it was
That
in
was no,
2018.
because
The One
your
Piece episode.
your first episode was Asian John's last episode.
Indeed.
So yeah, those were two very noteworthy things that happened that year on the Bat Jar. And we also reached our 100th episode in the fall of 2018, so that was noteworthy as well. And we're going to just dive right on in here to our official categories for 2018, starting, of course, with video games.
Ooh, there's some exciting ones here.
Here are the top 5 best-selling video games from Forbes. Number 5, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate.
Yeah, that's
So
Nintendo
this is
getting their
the
foot in the door for I think the first time. No, there was
Breath
also
of the
the
Wild
Breath of the
last
Wild,
year.
yeah. But
So this is
still,
the Switch version of Super Smash Bros.
yeah.
Then is that
And
right? I don't think
it
I've
is the
played this
Nintendo
one yet.
Switch version of Super Smash Brothers. It's also the one that has had. It was kind of like established as being largely friendly to DLC, downloadable content, and Nintendo has been actually adding new characters to it at every E3 since, and a lot of other gaming events. They'll add new characters from different franchises, and more characters from non Nintendo exclusive franchises. Quite notably, Sans from Undertale was added to the roster. I believe last year, which it was a character from an indie game making it onto like one of the, if not the biggest like fighting game in history. Like it's huge what Super Smash Brothers is right now.
Yeah, and there's a note here. This game was released in December of 2018, so the fact that it made the top 5 with only 1 month to sell games, that's very impressive, and it just
Yeah,
speaks to the audience for that franchise.
I mean Super Smash Brothers always gets a big hype. It's one of the games that when they release it sells really well for Nintendo, but I think that this one in particular, because once again they had announced the roster and people were amazed at how many different games and different franchises were being put into it. Castlevania was a new thing that people were really excited. There were different um, characters, and the fact that they knew that different characters would be added on, I think, really encouraged people to be like, well, if my favorite character isn't in it yet, maybe he will be.
Number 4, so Bat
Oh,
Cookie
Bat
for
Cookie,
sure.
yes. Also,
Number
it is my second favorite Super Smash Bros. After the original. And for people who know me and know how stingy I am about admitting games that like beyond the N64 one are good, that's pretty extraordinary.
Number 4, Madden NFL 19 football, and then number 3, NBA 2K19. So basketball, football. This year, this is like the second time I think we've seen basketball do better than football. So
Yeah,
that
I think it might have to do also with the demographic that's interested in the games and like how consoles are becoming more and more mainstream, and I think basketball is a more mainstream sport, if not sporting event. Like I do believe the Super Bowl still gets more traction than the NBA
yeah.
would, but um, I believe basketball as a sport is probably a lot more popular than football is.
Well, and we're of course speculating here, but maybe because the basketball season goes on for longer than the football season, there's more of an appeal of following, like maybe there's just more replay, I guess, or
I
you
was
can play a
completely
game
unaware of
longer.
that fact, but it is very possible. Look
So
at you being a sportsman.
I still give them both bad noogies.
Oh yes, me too.
Number 2, Call of Duty Black Ops 4. This astounds me because I thought they only made 2 Black Ops, but
I
apparently there
know.
were.
I was Yeah, that's it. I did not know there were 4 of them. I think at some point they just all kind of meld in my mind like the Transformers movies.
So this is one of the only years in the decade so far where a Call of Duty title is not the top selling game. But this is an important point. Well, we'll just mention it now. The number 1 selling game of the year was Red Dead Redemption 2, but the Forbes article was very particular in pointing out that digital sales were not included for Call of Duty, but they were for Red Dead. And so they seem to think that if digital sales were included, that Call of Duty Black Ops 4 would have been ranked first instead of Red Dead Redemption 2.
Interesting. But I feel like it's
So,
also a little bit harder to keep track of them. However, I'm gonna go ahead and give the Bat Noogie to Call of Duty again because I don't know. There's something about a series that if most people were sure there were only 2 games and there were 4, there's something there that isn't quite right. And it's different than Final Fantasy, where it's like you're not quite keeping track at which number they're at. I believe they're at 15 right now, or maybe 16. But like, I literally only thought there were 2 Black Ops.
well, I'll give it a back cookie because it's impressive that it went on for 4 titles.
I
And
suppose.
For Red Dead Redemption 2, I do remember this being a thing where it was like it sold incredibly well and it was like
Yeah.
one of the most popular video games.
Well, I remember when
Of,
we earlier in the episodes we talked about the first one, and I was like, oh yeah, I remember this game went well, but I remember distinctly that the second one, Red Dead Redemption 2, was yeah, it was like the hit game of the year. And
so
I
that's
remember like people from very wide kind of places. I do believe like possibly because he was a voice actor for the game, but possibly not. One of the players for the Critical Role D&D podcast was really really hyped about it. But I think it's also just because he wanted to play it because it was cowboys and a bunch of. But like I remember hearing from different sources that weren't necessarily like um very gamery that were excited about that game. Like people I knew who were very casual gamers were like, "Oh yeah, Red Dead Redemption 2 is gonna be great." So
yeah,
big
and
bat cookie for that. And I
yeah.
mean, it's a cowboy game. It's pretty great.
Yeah, and for the sheer, it must be one of those situations where the sequel was better than the original because it did well, much better sales wise. And I've heard way more about the second one than the first, so I'll give it a back cookie as well. So you realize as we talked about that list, all those games were sequels to existing video game franchises, and you had to get to the 6th best selling game before you saw a game that wasn't part of a franchise, and even that, Marvel's Spider-Man, while it was the start of like a new branding of Spider-Man games, obviously there have been many, many Spider-Man video games over the years. But I just want to mention, like, I watched all the cinematics for this one on YouTube, and even just watching that as if it was like an animated movie, it was very impressive, and I heard nothing but good things about this game. So I'll give
Yeah,
Marvel Spider-Man a back cookie.
I'll do that too. It looked good, and I like games that you can like. Could you follow the storyline just by watching the cinematics?
Yeah,
Because it's a thing my brother and I once did with all the Halo games. We decided to watch all the Halo cinematics as a movie, and we're like, ah, I know what happens in Halo more or less, and it's a good story.
yeah. The only downside is you really miss a lot of the fight scenes because, of course, that's the
Ah, yes.
gameplay.
But you see the end of it, you're like, okay, we won that one.
Moving on to the most played games on Steam. To be honest, compared to 2017, it's most of the same titles. The only difference is that instead of Grand Theft Auto, which finished 7th for this year, we have
Hey.
Monster Hunter World making it as the 5th most played game.
Yeah, I think we talked about all of these pretty much. I do. The one
So
thing also is that Fortnite isn't a Steam game. I don't believe so. I believe that Fortnite is its own thing. Yeah, it's
yeah, so
not
Monster Hunter, would
a
that be
Steam
a back
game.
cookie or
So
a nuggie?
oh, Bat Cookie. I really like the Monster Hunter series. I've only played it like a couple of times, but it is really cool. It's you're hunting giant monsters. It's very much in the style of like JRPGs like Xenoblade and things where it's kind of open world, but also it's a solid RPG, and I think that people really liked it for the immersive side of it very much, as well as the kind of like um, the collectible items side of it, if you will. I don't know, it's hard to
Right.
explain, but I mean, people who are video game completionists who want to like get every item possible in the game also really like this kind of a game. So
All
bat
right, I'll
cookie
give it
for
a bad
that.
cookie. Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Siege, Counter Strike, Global Offensive, Defense of the Ancients 2, and PlayerUnknown's Battleground. All the same games. I see no need to say anything different than what we said last week, so I'll give them all bad cookies for being popular.
Yeah, I mean, also generally for Steam.
Talking about some indie games here, I'm just going to go through these relatively fast, and you can tell me if you've heard of these before. The Thin Silence,
I have not.
Pillars of Eternity
Unless
2, Deadfire.
let me think. This thin silence is that? Oh no, it's not what I thought it was. Interesting. Pillars of Eternity. The first one I remember hearing about it. I did not know there was a second one. The first one was good. I'll
The
give it a bat cookie for that.
The Gardens Between,
No idea.
Chuchel.
That one rings a bell. Let me
I should
look
mention
up
this
real.
list comes from indiegamingwebsite.com. So
Nope,
this was the
never heard of that one. It was
I
not what I
figure
thought it might be.
what better source of quality indie games than Indie Game Website?
Yeah,
Donut County?
that scene. Oh, y- I may. I believe I've seen like a Let's Player play through this or play part of this, but I never played it. It looks fun and offbeat, but still, I don't know. I think the only one I'm giving a bat cookie is Pillar of Eternity. Um,
Frostpunk?
Never heard of it.
Guacamele 2?
Oh, there was a first one? No,
Apparently,
never heard
apparently
of it.
Guacamele is like it's like vegetable fighting game.
I like the concept of that. I'm not sure if I would necessarily like that game though. But
Yeah, so I'm gonna give all of these bat noogies.
I give Pillar of Eternity a bat cookie. It was pretty. It looked nice and it was RPG-ish as I recall, and I think it had a good. The reason why it did very well, as I recall, I could be wrong, is that it had a very good cooperative multiplayer mode, which I am always a big fan of.
All right, moving on now to TV shows from 2018. Here are the top 5 most watched shows according to the Nielsen rankings. Number 5, we have This Is Us, which we've mentioned on the show before, where we none of us have watched it, but we know it's a very like sad show, and people really seem to connect to it.
Yeah,
Um,
I
it
always when I
cracked the
see the
top 5 this
title.
year.
Hmm?
I said it cracked the top 5 this year.
Yeah, that's true. I do remember that like every time I see the title, it just makes me think of that series of the short series of episodes Sacha Baron Cohen made, which is like Welcome to America, and I always keep thinking that that's what it is because it had a similar vibe to it, but it is completely different.
Yeah, so even though I'm not a fan of the show, I think it's impressive that it's maintained popularity to the point of cracking the top 5. So I'll give it a bat cookie.
Yeah, that cookie.
Number 4, NCIS.
I
It
mean,
moved
it's
up this
still
year.
there. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
I'll give it a back cookie for that accomplishment. It's maintaining itself, and that's still the further we get on in this list, the more impressive it is. Like, there's a difference between like video game franchises where you can do like a new game, new actors, you can revamp everything, but having a show stay up there that long is quite a different story.
and number 3 we have so of course bat cookie for NCIS, and then number 3 we have The Big Bang Theory.
And that was its last season, correct?
I am verifying that on the internet because no, it ended in 2019.
Oh, okay, it was getting
So
there.
this would have been it was getting towards the end of that. So I At this point, I wasn't watching the show, so I'll give it a Thin Station back cookie.
Yeah, I'll do the same. I remember like I think I discovered that the show was over when I was watching compilations of like Raj's funniest moments or something like that, and I was like, oh, this show is actually over. Okay. Didn't make me want
Number
to watch it to see how it ended. It just made me aware that it had ended.
number two, Sunday Night Football, which was the top rated, regularly scheduled program last year, so it dipped in popularity a bit. I don't like football though, so bat noogie.
Bat Noogie.
And number one, surprisingly, controversially, this is actually a very important thing to talk about. So number one, we have Roseanne, the revival of Roseanne, and there's a couple different things to talk about this. First of all, Roseanne symbolizes a general trend in TV that was coming about at this point in the decade, where networks were essentially bringing back shows that had aired in the 80s and the 90s. They were bringing back the cast decades later and essentially producing new episodes, kind of following what Netflix did with like Gilmore Girls and Full House, kind of making a revival of the show. More and more shows were doing things like Roseanne, bringing back old shows. And when Roseanne came back, it was an immediate hit. And as you guys can hear from what we're saying, it was the most watched TV show in 2018. It came back in like the winter of 2018 and had like a only like a 13 episode run that went until the spring, and it was renewed for a second season after its like second episode because it was doing so well. Why it's controversial, beef pork ribs, maybe you're familiar with this,
Not
is
even
that
remotely.
okay, so after the first season had finished airing, Roseanne Barr, the obviously the main actor, the title character, posted a tweet which essentially compared a staffer of Barack Obama to a gorilla, and it was perceived as racist, and it basically led to ABC firing her from the show, canceling Roseanne, and then they essentially announced a new show called The Conners, which essentially brought back every other cast member except Roseanne, and they wrote it into the story that essentially Roseanne passes away.
That I'm sorry, but that just reminds me of when they wrote out Charlie Sheen of Two and a Half Men.
Yeah,
You know,
and
they was just like the first episode of the season suddenly is his funeral, and it's like, and then he died, and there's like no more, nothing more. It's just, yep, he's not in the show anymore, guys. Deal with it.
yeah, and I mean, there's something to be said. The Conners has been on for the last couple of years. It never reached the same to the so far because it isn't over yet, but it has yet to reach the same level of popularity that this revival of Roseanne did. And again, it kind of speaks to just the reality of what America is like, because what people liked about Roseanne when it was on the first time is it kind of showed middle class America. It showed families that were struggling to get by, and I've seen old episodes of Roseanne. They like argue, have fights with their kids about being able to send them to college, which are most TV shows or most sitcoms anywhere about like upper middle class families where like financial hardships were very rarely a topic that was discussed because everyone was doing well.
Or it
And
was
so
a weird hybrid, like the Fresh Prince of Bel Air, where it's like some of them are from the rich family, but others aren't, and it was like a juxtaposition of the other one. But it was always understood the rich people were nice enough to help the other ones.
yeah,
Because I think
and
Gilmore Girl had a similar kind of tension there, where she came from money, so her grandparents were always able to bail the family out if need be, but
yeah, so
they
and
were trying to make it out
in
alone.
terms of American network television, it was a little more on the conservative side, so it appealed to a certain audience that other shows didn't. And so when it came back, it was kind of like, wow, this show really seems to strike a chord because there's an audience here. And that's a trend we're going to see with some other things that happened this year. All of a sudden, this audience that wasn't watching shows and movies beforehand showed up. So I did watch a lot of that one revival season of Roseanne. I don't think I watched it all, and I enjoyed it. I thought it was interesting. Having not been like a super faithful follower of the show the first time, I was kind of like having to go to Wikipedia to see who the characters were and whatnot. So the fact that the show did so well, I'll give it a back cookie. And the whole Roseanne thing, she really shouldn't have put that tweet out. So I'm gonna give it a bat noogie.
Yeah, just give it a bat noogie. I'm not like it is impressive, but not enough, I think, to justify. Like if it had stayed up, I think I might have given it a bat cookie, but it's I don't know. Cashing in on nostalgia isn't always great.
And I found a most streamed shows list that is accounting for all streaming services. However, 4 of these 5 are Netflix shows. So I think
And
it
then
even
most two of them are the same, are similar to last year's.
yeah. So number 5 is The Handmaid's Tale from Hulu, which of course was a new show in 2017 and obviously maintained its popularity. I've never seen it, so I guess I got to give it a Sensation Bat cookie just to acknowledge its popularity.
And for being the only non-Netflix one up there, I think, yeah, Sensation Bat Cookie.
Black Mirror, which is surprising because this show started like somewhere earlier in the decade, but it hit the most streamed list this year. So I guess they must have had a really good season.
I will admit I've actually never watched Black Mirror. I've heard a lot about it, but I've never watched it. And I don't know. I always felt like when people talked about it, it's like, is this like a weird revival of the Twilight Zone slash X Files slash, all of those shows that are the same thing, or is it something more? I don't know. Maybe you can enlighten me
I
a
haven't
bit
seen
on
it.
it,
I've
but
seen like half an episode.
okay.
the Asian John was watching this at one point. I'll give it a Sensation Bat cookie.
Yeah, I'll give it two because I've heard mostly good things. Maybe during the quarantine this should be one of our goals is try to check out that show.
Number 3, Orange is the New Black,
Still
still
don't get the
being
appeal.
strong. Yeah, but it's winning in popularity. I'll still give it a bat noogie though.
Yeah.
Number 2, Money Heist, a Netflix show I've never heard of before. So
I think
I'm
I've
out of the
heard
loop.
of it only because Netflix was advertising it to me. Like I've definitely seen I believe Netflix has suggested it to me. But it did not look compelling or interesting. I could be wrong. But
I'll give it a bat noogie.
yeah, me too.
And I don't know why, but 13 Reasons Why is
It's
still the
still
most streamed show. I'm
it,
not sure if it's because people were still like rewatching that first season or if they released a second season this year.
I don't know. It might have been, the old adage, all publicity is good publicity. Maybe that's why people were like, well, I gotta check it out now to know what all the fuss was about. But still a
I'm
bad
still
noogie
giving it a
for
bat
me.
noogie. Yeah.
Yeah.
New shows that started this year. Again, what I find interesting, I found 13 shows that started this year of note, and honestly, more than half of them are streaming shows. So we've definitely reached that point where new shows that are popular are not necessarily on networks. So number 1, we have Jack Ryan, which started on Amazon Prime. This is, of course, famous to me because they took Jim from The Office and turned him into an action star.
Yeah, which apparently worked more or less well. So I mean, good on
I've
John
yet to see it.
Krasinski, but
I'll give it a bat cookie. Why not?
I'll give it a bad cookie too. I mean, I don't know if I'd ever watch it, but I like the Jack Ryan movies they used to make. So maybe.
Number 2, we have The Rookie, not an adaptation of the baseball movie with Dennis Quaid, but a show where Nathan Fillion, at his current age, being a guy in his late 40s, I guess, joins the police force in some city.
No, I mean that just based on the actor and the concept, I might check it out. But also, are you sure? I feel like he's older than that.
It really doesn't matter,
No,
but
I know, but I'm just thinking back. Like, I mean, he was in seasons. He was in the last season of Buffy, and he wasn't super young then. So
I haven't seen it. So even though
yeah,
I like Nathan Fillion, I'm going to give it a bat noogie.
I give Sensation Bat Cookie. Sounds like it could be good.
New Amsterdam. This is a show my parents watch and really love.
Is it
It's
about
set at
New York?
it's No, it's set at the oldest public hospital in America, and it's one of these shows where you kind of check in with a lot of different characters. Like there's a doctor, and there's like a psychologist, and there's a surgeon, and there's somebody who's like trying to manage the business side of the hospital, and it's very interesting because it kind of shows all the complexities of running a hospital.
Ah, so do you know why I said New York?
No,
because the song Istanbul, not Constantinople, has the line, even old New York was once New Amsterdam. Why'd they change it? I can't say. People just like it better that way. And so that's what I thought of it. But it sounds interesting, but also kind of sounds like a thing that's been done before. I don't know if you what was it called? There's a British sitcom that's run forever and ever
Well,
that
this isn't a
is
sitcom. This is like a drama.
okay. Sorry, a drama, not a sitcom. It's a yeah. It's I think it's called The Heart, and it's a similar thing. It's like a period piece that happens in a hospital in like the English
Yeah.
countryside.
I've enjoyed like when I've watched it with my parents. I've enjoyed it, so I'll give it a back cookie.
I'll give it a bad noogie. It doesn't sound that great.
The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, a Netflix show that was meant to be a spin-off of Riverdale, and most people might know this that Sabrina the Teenage Witch is actually a spin-off of Archie Comics. So
Yeah, and I'm against both those. Like, man, Riverdale was a bad idea, and trying to add to it, even though Sabrina thematically made more sense to go a little darker because she is a witch. If you've ever read the Sabrina the Teenage Witch comics, like, it does not lend itself to being spooky or mature or anything. I don't understand why they're trying to do this. Bat noogie for me.
yeah, and I have a lot of nostalgia for the '90s show with Melissa Joan Hart, which is very much a fun show. And this was like straight up satanic at parts. So I'm giving the Chilling Adventures a bat noogie. Titans, the version of the Teen Titans that aired on the new DC Comics streaming service, DC Universe, which of course I've complained ad nauseum
All
on this
right.
podcast about not being available in Canada. Thankfully, it became a Netflix show in Canada, and so I was able to watch it legally.
And what did
But
you think of it?
well, you and I have talked about this show in person before, and I am very torn. There's parts of it I like, and there's parts that I feel are very edgelord, and they're just trying to be mature for the sake of being mature. And it's like, yeah, we're gonna swear because we're on streaming and we can get away with that. And
Yeah, I feel like I haven't watched it, but I don't like, even though people like, I do know people like you who give it, some, like, there are good things about it. I don't know a single person who likes it. Like, who is just like, yeah, this is a good show. Everybody's like, there are good things to it, but, and then they start listing all the problems with it, or people just straight up dislike it. So I'll give it a bad nookie for that.
I'll
Especially
give it a
because, hey, Teen Titans will be coming back. Crossing your fingers that's still happening.
yeah. So I'll give Titans a Sensation back cookie. It ends on like I haven't seen the end of season 2 yet because I started Exodus 90, but I have good hopes for it. Black Lightning was a show that when it was announced for the CW, I was surprised. I'm like, this is the point. Like, this is a very like obscure 1970s DC character that's getting his own TV show. And when I started watching it, I found myself actually really enjoying it. It's about this, and the gimmick they took with the show was interesting because he's like a middle-aged high school principal who used to be a superhero but then retired because it was putting too much stress on his family.
He's a Speed Force user, right?
Nope,
Or a
no Speed
speedster?
Force.
I thought he was.
He's a metahuman who has essentially has electric
Oh,
powers,
okay.
and it's very interesting. I've enjoyed it. It kind of has. It almost has like a. They talk about their superpowers as if they're gifts from God, which is something I don't hear very much in superhero shows. And they've just recently introduced him into the larger Arrowverse through Crisis on Infinite Earth, so he's now connected to those other shows. And yeah, it's dull in parts, but I really like Black Lightning, so I'll give it a back cookie.
You've convinced me to give it Sensation Bat Cookie.
Cobra Kai, which is a pseudo sequel. What it is, it's like a spin-off to the Karate Kid from the '80s.
Yeah, uh I
It fe-
haven't watched it. I heard a lot about it, and it's one of those things that, like, given infinite time, eventually it would make it onto my list of things I want to watch. Given that the like the concept sounds like it could be quite entertaining, but I never got around to watching any of it. Like, I'm vaguely aware of its existence.
Well, it's noteworthy because YouTube at this point was really trying to push their paid service, and they were trying to push their original content that you could only access if you paid for YouTube. And Cobra Kai was admittedly a great gimmick because the whole point of the show is that it follows the bully from the original movie now as an adult, and essentially, yeah, like what is it? What
It
happens
is
to the
still
bully?
it's the same actor, right? He's reprising the role, correct?
Yeah, and they had Ralph Macchio come back
Yeah,
too to play uh, what's his name, Daniel, as well.
Daniel's son.
So I've heard good things about it. Like you said though, it's like very low on my priority list. So I think
Yeah,
the very fact that it happened is a bat like a sensation bat cookie.
yeah, I'll go with that.
We had a reboot of Magnum PI come out this year, and it kept the theme song, but then and it has a lot. Like I actually watched this for a little bit, and it kind of fell off my priority list. It feels like a lot of this. It feels like a lot of the same, except Jay Hernandez, who's the new Magnum PI, he doesn't quite have the same charm as Tom Selleck, and there's a fun dynamic where like Higgins is a woman this time around, so they're kind of like bantery Alfred Batman relationship has like a kind of like almost like a romantic hint to it, which I enjoyed, but I
Huh.
kind of fell off it because it just lost priority among
I
other
feel like
shows
if
I was
I'd
watching.
watched the original, I might have given this one a watch, but I didn't. So I'm gonna give it a
I'll,
sensation bat noogie, or a like
I'm
one knuckle bat noogie. Yes.
I'm giving it a sensation bat cookie.
Oh.
Disenchantment. So this was like the new show from Matt Groening, creator of The Simpsons and Futurama, and it was billed as a Netflix original. So it was going to be like it was like, oh my gosh, like we're at the point where he's doing new content for only for streaming. And what I ended up watching, I wasn't very impressed. I think I watched the first 4 episodes and I just couldn't get into it.
I've watched a number of episodes here and there. I like compared to The Simpsons and Futurama, which I recently started watching. I don't think it compares at all. But like it has fun moments and it has some concept that were good, but I felt like it was a little too unfocused. Like it tried to have too much of a story and not enough. Like when a movie or a TV show tries to do two things and does neither one properly, so it ends up being disappointing on both ends. That's what I kind of felt like. They were trying to have an overarching storyline, but it didn't really work, and they were trying to keep it kind of episodic-ish, but that also didn't really work. And I think that's where the weakness was. Like it wasn't a bad show. I still enjoy it and I still watch it, but there was never like a want for me to keep watching it because it's like a show I might put on every once in a while and be like, oh yeah, this still exists. But so like I'd give it a sensation bat cookie.
No, Bat Noogie for me. Lost interest.
Fair enough.
The Dragon Prince, a Netflix show that I watch with my roommate Professor F. I find it surprisingly charming. Like it's a show that's aimed at kids, but the writing is done in such a way that I can still enjoy it. I find some of the jokes funny. I'm intrigued by the story and the lore it presents.
Yeah,
The
it's on
animation is
my
interesting.
uh, uh it's actually on a sorry, kitten is trying to bite me. It's on a short list of mine for things I want to watch soon. Partially because a YouTuber who I really like, who mostly does videos about anime, but does a lot of videos about like characters, and made a video and long video about like how animation villains are underrated. And one of the villains he talked about was from the Dragon Prince, and it made me really want to watch the show. So it's on my short list of shows to watch. I'll give it at least a sensation bat cookie for now. It might be upgraded after I actually watch it.
Full on Bat Cookie. And even though there are some other shows here, I think we're just going to move on. There's
Oh, I
only
just
a
want
hand.
to quickly say Final Space is a bat cookie and it's great.
Fair enough. TV shows that ended this year, not too many. Surprise! Like there were shows that ended, but they were all kind of
There's
outside the
only
realm of
two of
narrative
them that I kind
retelling.
of know what it is.
Yeah, New Girl was this show with Zoe Deschanel that was on. I knew it was. I knew it was a thing, but I never watched it. So
I
Bat
think I've
Noogie.
heard the title once, Bat Noogie.
Once Upon a Time, which we of course mentioned when it started.
Oh yes, never mind. I remember that now.
Uh, I'll s- I'll give it a Thin Station Bat Cookie just because it sounds
Sure.
interesting. Maybe I'll end up watching at some point. House of Cards ended.
Bat Noogie for the ending and what happened to that show. I mean, I understand why it went down and why Kevin Spacey was dropped, but it's again like Two and a Half Men. Once the main actor who kind of made the show left, it went downhill very quickly.
Yeah. I'd agree with
Unfortunate
you
as that
there.
is, and there were legitimate reasons to take him out of the show, but it just wasn't the same show.
Yeah, and I just put all of Marvel Netflix because basically all their shows got canceled because at this point Disney Plus was announced, and so Marvel, of course, not being interested anymore in partnering with their competition in the streaming business. Unfortunately, like it saw it put Iron Fist to bed, and Luke Cage kind of dwindled in quality. But Jessica Jones and Daredevil, like Daredevil had a really great season this year, and it ended thankfully on like a high note. But I really hope they'll bring that back on Disney Plus someday. That'd be great.
Yeah,
So I guess I'll give that whole thing a back cookie because it led to Disney Plus, so that's good.
true. Yeah, bad cookie for that.
Moving on to anime from 2018. This list comes from Fandom, and they claim to have done a ranking based on users. So here are the top-rated anime of 2018. Number 10, we have Hina Matsuri. Have you heard of this one before?
No, I don't think
I
so.
I have watched it. It's about this gangster who essentially has this little girl with insane psychic abilities show up at his house, and he essentially they becomes like her foster father because she has no parent, and she has this total like kind of like mob psycho. She has this total like nonchalant attitude about everything, and
Okay,
it's just sort of about her doing wacky stuff and her being deadpan about it, and everyone around her is like, "What the heck just happened?"
I see.
Um,
Although I
I
feel
found
like
it charming.
I feel like Psyche K kind of has that better. I don't know.
Yeah,
It does a
I'll
very
give
good
it.
between the Psyche K and Mob existing. I don't think we needed another one.
Yeah, but like, and I'll give it a sensation back cookie.
Sure, I can give that if you say it was good.
Attack on Titan season 3. I mean, at this point, I'd read ahead to the end of the manga, and I wasn't happy how that ended, so I kind of stopped watching the show.
I'd stopped watching the show, stopped reading the manga. I think it is a shame that they did not ride the hype, and I think again, like we talked about it when we talked about the second season coming out, and it was like, yeah, it was just 4 years late, 3 years late. It was too late, too little, too late,
Yeah,
unfortunately, to
Bat
keep
Nuggy.
the hype going. So Bat Nuggy.
Number 8. That time I got reincarnated as a slime. So
Uh,
this is in. Have you seen
yeah,
this before? Because I have.
I haven't, but I like heard of it, and
It's quite amusing because we're getting to the point now with these trapped in another world isekai anime that the gimmicks become more and more
yeah,
gimmicky.
it really feels like even just the title sounds like it's like they wanted to do another isekai, but they had no idea what to do.
It's kind of funny because essentially it's a comedy adventure action show, and the whole gimmick is that a slime, this little ball of goop, essentially has the ability to absorb other people's powers, and so he just as the show goes on, he gets more and more powerful, and it's quite funny. Like I do enjoy it, so I'll give it a bat cookie.
I'll give it a Bat Noogie. The concept's been done by other things, and other things I believe better probably. Remonster was sounds like almost exactly the same thing, except he starts as a goblin rather than a slime, and that was a pretty good series.
Violet Evergarden, number 7, a Netflix anime.
I haven't seen it, but I hear it looks really nice.
Yes, that's what I same thing. So
I'll
that
give it a
hasn't
bad
been enough
cookie.
to.
You kind of need pretty
All
things
right,
every once
fine.
in a while to make you feel things.
Number 6, Agretzko, also a Netflix anime. I
Yes.
have watched all of this and I love it.
Yeah,
It's
no,
it's
big old bat cookie for Agretsuko. It's hilarious.
yeah. So just imagine this, everybody. The company that created Hello Kitty, so that kind of character design, except it's now a city, and everyone who lives in this city are animals of different species, but they look cute, like little cute animals, like Hello Kitty. Main character is this raccoon who works in an office, and she has a terrible job, and she hates her boss, and
She hates
it's
her
basically
life. She's stuck in
yeah,
a dead end job and
and
has a lot
she
of anger issues.
yeah, and she takes out her rage by basically singing death metal songs in karaoke bars by herself.
It's great. That I realize that when you talk about it, it's one of those you gotta trust us that this anime is better than what its core concept sounds like.
Yeah, I give it a
Because it
back then.
sounds kind of silly, but it is very good. And I think especially for people who are kind of like starting off in their jobs and finding that like you don't really like what you're doing, you'd be like, well, look, there are ways to cope with that. And some are healthy, some are unhealthy, and this kind of looks at both.
Number 5, Darling in the Franxx. Have you heard of this show?
Never. Well, I mean, I've
I have,
heard the name, but I have no idea what it's about.
well, I have watched it in its entirety.
Oh,
It's one of those anime original shows, so there's no source material it's based on. And in the same sense of like Gurren Lagann or whatever, it has like a set 25 episodes and that's it. But it's one of those shows where at a certain point it just goes off the deep end story wise, and you're like, okay, I feel like you wrote yourself into a wall with all these mysteries, and then the explanation you give is terrible.
that's
It's another one of these.
unfortunate.
It's another one of these shows like Aquarion or even Evangelion, where it's about teenagers piloting giant robots. Except in this one, you need a boy and a girl to pilot a robot together, and there's all kinds of symbolism for human sexuality and all this stuff that's kind of shoved in there. And
Of course it is.
if if you look at a picture of how these characters pilot these robots, it's ridiculous. And if you're not an anime fan, you'd be like, "What am I even looking at?" Because it dips so hard in quality, I'm gonna give it a bat nuggy.
I yeah, what you've said doesn't sound like it's any good. And I just googled the how they pilot it. Yep. Uh it's anime. You gotta accept it.
Number 4, Banana Fish. I know nothing about this show.
I know nothing about this show either. Um
Bat nuggy, I guess.
yeah, I don't know. It's the only thing I found with a very quick Google thing is that the manga started in the 80s. So who knows? Maybe it was a sleeping giant like JoJo's, but less likely because I feel like I would have heard about that if that was the case.
Number 3, My Hero Academia season 3. And I wrote this note on our Google Doc to remind myself that this was the point where All Might, the superhero of the show, has this big showdown with the big villain, all for one. And I remember watching those episodes being like, this is intense. And without
I
spoiling anything,
no, sorry, my cords
oh,
are
you're
being
talking to the
taken
cat.
away. Yes.
Oh, I thought you were telling me.
No, no, no. No, no. It was a great event in the for the show.
Yeah, the status quo in a way changes. And I think it's sometimes some of these shows that go on for a long time, it just sort of feels like a lot of the same for a long time. And so when this happens in season 3, there's after this fight, everything changes and it really amps up the intensity. So I loved it. Back cookie. Number 2, A Place Farther Than the Universe. I've heard of this show. It's about a group of girls that decide to make a pilgrimage to Antarctica. I don't, and I've tried to watch YouTube videos where people explain why it's so good, and apparently it has a lot to do with the characterization and whatever. But at the end of the day, it's just another show about girls, cute girls doing cute things. So I give it a bat nuggy.
Yeah, it sounds like I don't know. I've I feel like I have heard about it, but not in any like overwhelmingly positive light. This list seems a little strange, to be honest, but who knows? Number one though is a good one, so let's move on to talking about that one.
Devilman Crybaby, which was a Netflix anime. I understand this is a sequel to some show called Devilman from the 80s.
Yeah, um, I found that I haven't watched a lot of it. I did watch some of Devilman when it originally came out, and it was I don't know. It's an interesting.
I haven't seen it, and I've been told it's not a show for a lot of people. Like it's pretty dark and gruesome in
Yeah,
part.
which is something that Devilman definitely had. Kind of going for it was that it was more of a darker show, but it's kind of a fight fire with fire, fight demons with demons concept, which I believe, like, if you're into that, and if you really like, if you're going into it expecting it to be kind of darker and more, even like I'd go as far as even saying grimdark, if you're aware of the term and what it kind of means. Then you'll probably enjoy it. But if not, like, yeah, I acknowledge it's not for everybody, but I give it a bad cookie. I enjoyed it personally,
Bat
and
Noogie
I
for
enjoyed
me.
the original as well.
Some other noteworthy anime that came out this year. Rascal Does Not Dream of Bunny Girl Senpai. It's a ridiculous title, but I have watched this show.
It
It's one of
sounds like
these.
your kind of a show. Like, I'm not saying that I necessarily dislike it because you like it, but it sounds like more the type of like comedy thing, comedy anime that slice of life that you would enjoy.
Well, it's a supernatural mystery show. It's I hate to compare it to this, but that Monogatari series that keeps popping up in the
Okay.
top rated lists. Basically, there's one main male character, and it's based on a novel series, so it kind of makes sense. It follows this pattern of basically every and like this the season had 12 episodes, and each there were four 3 episode story arcs, and he encounters a different girl with a different supernatural problem. So, like, for
Okay.
example, the first girl he meets, for whatever reason, she's become invisible and nobody can see her, except he can see her. And the reason why it's called Bunny Girl Senpai is because she literally dresses up in one of those bunny girl costumes to try and see if anyone notices her. But because she's invisible to them, no one notices her. And the kind of the show starts when he like notices her in the library dressed like this, and he's like, "What are you doing?" And that kind of sets off a series of adventures where he encounters people where you know one of the girls he encounters, like, everyone's forgotten about who she is. There's another one, like, there's a clone of her running around, and I find it heartwarming. It was good kind of comfort television at the time. And I like mysteries, so of course there's always a mystery, like, how does this happening, why does this keep happening to this guy? So I'll give it a back cookie.
I think you've convinced me to, yeah, give it at least a sensation back cookie. It sounds interesting at the very
Cells at
least.
Work. This is
I
basically
still haven't
Osmosis
seen this,
Jones.
but yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about it, and I've heard that, yeah, it's like Osmosis Jones, but as a TV series, which means it can go more like less plot and more interesting, I think, is the way I'd
Yeah.
describe it, or
So
the
it's
way
like
it's been described to me.
the inside of a human body, and the main characters are a red blood cell who is portrayed as a girl who's like a delivery person because red blood cells deliver
Yeah.
oxygen to your body. And then the other main character is a white blood cell who's a guy who basically goes around killing viruses and bad things. And so it's very very cute, and I guess you can learn something about biology through it.
Yeah.
I've seen the
I
first
love shows
episode.
that have this kind of like kind of thing where you you know, might be like maybe not that you're learning strictly like, a class, but that it is, has facts in it, which a lot of animes randomly hide things that are like, oh, this is interesting and actually true. Wow. I think that was a really big one.
And the final show I'll just mention, it's like the ultimate anime for anime fans. It's called Watakoi. Love is Hard for Otaku. And it's basically a romantic slice of life show about different types of otaku, which is a Japanese term for essentially fan or fanboy, fangirl,
Literally meaning
who
stay at home.
yeah, so it's like different types of gamers and manga fans and whatever who essentially start relationships with each other. I don't think you can really appreciate it unless you are into anime. So for broad appeal, I'd have to give it a bat noogie, but because I kind of fall into that fandom, I guess I'll give it a sensation bat cookie.
I give it a sensation back cookie generally.
And some anime movies that came out this year. Mirai, which translates to future. It's about a boy who meets a teenage version of his newly born baby sister. Haven't seen it yet, but it's on my like long list of things to watch.
Yeah, perhaps at some point. It looks
Bat
cute.
cookie?
Yeah, sensation back cookie.
Dragon Ball Super Broly, which we spoke about on the podcast, talking about movies that came out in 2019 in America. It
And we
was
also
released in
watched
December.
together.
That's right. We went and saw this at the theater
Yes, we
when it
did.
came out, and I really like it. It's very it showed how popular Dragon Ball is in the West with how well it did here, but it also did really well in Japan too. And aside from some spotty animation during the fight scenes where they look like video game characters, I really like this movie, so I'll go to Bat Cookie.
I'm giving it a sensation back cookie. I do understand that having not followed Dragon Ball Super, I didn't really get everything that was going on. But I have a huge nostalgia kick for the original Broly movie. I absolutely loved it. Even though I fully understand the plot was very weak and there was no point, but just the unstoppable quality Broly had in that movie, which wasn't fully translated in the remake, kind of made the character lose something for me. Although I can acknowledge that objectively, Broly in the new movie is a better character, he's just not the same.
Batman Ninja, a rare occasion of an American comic book character getting an anime film. I have yet to watch this. It's done in like a CG animation that I wish they didn't choose, but they did anyway. But I do want to watch it at some point because it's an anime movie about Batman, so I'll give it a Bat Cookie.
Yeah, Bad Cookie. It looked like it was good.
And finally, we have I Want to Eat Your Pancreas, which is not like a zombie thing. I believe it's about somebody who has like pancreatic cancer and they're like terminally ill or something. And it's one of these teenage love stories that happens in the midst of terminal illness. So it sounds very emotional.
It sounds very Fault in Our Stars, so I'm giving it a Bat Noogie for that. Because even as an anime, I still would not want to watch that movie.
I'll give it a thin station Bat Cookie. I can see myself watching at some point.
Fair enough.
And moving on to movies that were released in 2018. Here are the top 5 grossing films from boxofficemojo.com. Number 5, we have Deadpool 2.
Ah, yes, that was. I still haven't seen it. I can't believe that. I meant to, and then something always got in the way of it. But I will likely watch that in the near future. It looked like it was still good, even though there were problems around the production compared to the first one. But I still think it held up. You've seen
Yeah,
it, I
it's
assume.
yeah, I saw it. We reviewed it on the show. It's noteworthy because they were able to actually like re-edit it as a PG-13 release that they put out at Christmas time, Once Upon a Deadpool, and I think that is kind of noteworthy. The fact they were able to do that, and it works with a character like Deadpool whose mouth is covered, so they can literally redub lines for the character. And yeah, I think I might have enjoyed it more than the first one because they downplayed some elements of his character that I didn't enjoy as much in the first one. And yeah, why not? I'll give it a sensation Bat Cookie.
I give it a Bat Cookie as well. I mean, Ryan Reynolds is still a great Deadpool.
Number 4, Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom.
Did not
Even though
watch
I
it.
have, yeah, I admittedly have since seen the first Jurassic World on an airplane, but I have yet to watch the second one because I heard it wasn't very good. And if compared to the box office of the first one, which if you guys recall was the highest grossing film of 2015, it underperformed. So yeah, Bat Noogie.
Yeah, Bat Noogie. I haven't seen it, but like I wasn't impressed by the first one, so the second one being worse is kind of bad. Yeah, bad sign.
Number 3, Incredibles 2, which I loved.
Oh yeah, the only thing I have against this movie is that I do remember I had watched the first one the day I went to see to see it in theaters, and so I went directly from the first to the second one, and it took me like a few, like maybe 2 3 minutes, where it was a little bit like jarring because the voices had aged, even though it's supposed to be like direct sequel, and it literally happens the day of the Underminer, which is the very end of the first movie. It was like, but they sound different. Uh,
Yeah, the
but
only
beyond
thing I
that, I liked it. They did play into the Jack Jack a little heavily, but it didn't distract from the movie.
Yeah, I thought the movie
Um,
was excellent on all levels.
yeah,
All I can say is please don't wait another 14 years to do the third one.
yeah. I mean, I know some people who have made suggestions on how to rewrite parts of the plot so that the villain's scheme makes a bit more sense. And I'm like, yeah, sure, but it wasn't completely ridiculous, so I'm okay with it.
Bat Cookie.
Bat Cookie.
Number 2, Avengers Infinity War. Which honestly, it has such a this one compared to its follow-up, which we'll discuss obviously next week,
Maybe I should
has
watch it this week then, so I can discuss it next week.
and for me, Infinity War honestly has such a high rewatchability. I can watch the movie anytime. It's the way it moves at it moves at a fast pace, but not so fast you're like, what is going on here? If you've followed the MCU and you're able to see all these different characters meet each other for the first time, and to like see the different kinds of unique action scenes that come about from it, and seeing Thanos really kind of fully realized as a character, Avengers Infinity War had a big to-do list, and in my books, it delivered really
Yeah,
well.
I agree, and it's one of the reasons I've been hesitant to actually watch Endgame was because I'm like, but Infinity Wars did so well. I don't think they can repeat that success again. And who knows? Maybe I'll be proved wrong. I will try to watch it this week and see if my fears are laid to rest. But for now, Infinity War is definitely a bad cookie.
Yeah, Bat Cookie for sure. And the top grossing film of 2018, a single of note, the most money made by any single film in a particular calendar year this decade, Black Panther.
I I mean,
Yeah. I alluded to this earlier when we were talking about Roseanne, about how like unseen audiences were suddenly showing up for something. So I genuinely believe that there was, the fact that this was the one of the well, it wasn't the first. People think it's the first, but it's not. The fact that this was a film featuring African American characters in the leads, I genuinely believe there's an audience of moviegoers who had previously no interest in superhero movies who showed up in droves to watch Black Panther, and that's partially why it became so successful.
yeah, I think there's something to be said there because honestly, I don't think that in quality, and I know that the release date has to do with why Black Panther did better than Infinity Wars, because Infinity Wars ended up making more money, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
globally, Infinity
globally,
War
yeah,
made more money,
yeah.
but in terms of domestic, actually, Black Panther edged Infinity War out.
Okay, and I think Infinity Wars is objectively a much better movie. Not that Black Panther is a bad movie, but it definitely has some weaknesses that a lot of people didn't really like to acknowledge. And I'm still upset that even though there's a good chance, hopefully he will come back. Oh, no, I forgot his name. Uh,
Andy Serkis, Claw.
yeah, Claw dying in it, kind of pretty obviously instead of being a little ambiguous where it would have left a little more wiggle room, like to bring him back. Uh, was unfortunate, especially because Andy Serkis was such a good Claw and was having clearly so much fun playing it. But I don't know. I found that Black Panther wasn't that great. Like it was a solid movie. It's not one of the worst in the MCU, but I really don't put it as one of the best either. So
I would say it's in the top half. I would agree it's not as like it's not the best movie of the year, but I think it's as a phenomenon and how it actually like
I would actually
did
say
so
it's
well.
the third best Marvel movie of the year because I liked Ant-Man and the Wasp, which oops, I skipped ahead a little bit there, but I like that one better than I like Black Panther.
Okay, well, we would disagree there, but I'll give Black Panther a back cookie.
Yeah, I'd still give it a back cookie.
Other noteworthy movies from the year, the outside of the top five, the highest grossing movie was actually the Benedict Cumberbatch Grinch movie.
Power
So
of
that,
holiday movies because that
yeah,
I don't know.
yeah,
I haven't seen it. It could be very good, but like it's the third major motion picture around the Grinch, which is
I
a very
enjoyed it.
short children's movie. I mean, just on that alone, I'll give it a bad cookie. But it's
Yeah,
because it's impressive. But I'm not sure how much I like it.
the seventh highest grossing film of the year is the Jumanji Welcome to the Jungle. So I made a point of saying that this film was released at the end of 2017.
Yeah,
It did so well in 2018. It's actually in the top 10 for highest grossing movies. So back cookie for sure.
yeah, bad cookie. I mean, I remember at first being like, this movie is either going to be amazing or terrible, and it was amazing. It was great.
Mission Impossible Fallout. I enjoyed this one more than 5, but I don't think as much as 4. So I'll give it a sensation
Is
back
4
cookie.
Ghost Protocol?
Yes.
Yes. Then yeah, it's still a sensation. Like it's Tom Cruise doing a Mission Impossible movie. It's still good. It's still solid.
Ant-Man and the Wasp. I did not enjoy it as much as the first one, but I still enjoyed it. So I'll give it a sensation back cookie.
I don't. There are. I think overall I agree with you, but there are aspects of Ant-Man and the Wasp that I liked better than the original. Um, the villain was a little underdeveloped in how she was addressed and what her kind of plan was, but I felt like the chemistry between Hope and
Uh,
Scott was really good and developed in a like in an intelligent way in the movie. And I thought that they did good things with Hank Pym. I'm still upset that Hank Pym didn't create Ultron, but they did what they could with him. And the scene where his friend is on the truth serum is, I think, funnier than anything in either one of the two movies.
Number 10, Solo: A Star Wars Story.
Have not seen
My
it.
my expectations were so low, I was able to enjoy it. But I can say this
That's
is
that's
probably
not a that's not a very good review though. I
no,
think
it's not. So I'll give it a
that
two
was
knuckle
more or
bad
less my
movie.
review for the Sonic movie. Uh, Except the Sonic movie I actually thought was good. I don't know if I would go so far with if I ever watched Solo, but I have no interest in it. That noogie.
Venom. I
I may
wish they didn't
eventually
make that
watch
movie.
it, but I don't think I will.
Bat Noogie.
That noogie.
A Star is Born, the third version of this swing. Same thing. There's been multiple Grinches. This is another version of that. My parents didn't seem to enjoy it, so I'll give it a Bat Noogie on their behalf.
Who is it again?
In this version, it's Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga.
Yeah, no, Bat noogie.
Aquaman, big old bat
Hey,
cookie.
13th. That's not terrible considering
Well,
DC's.
it came out in December, so it made a lot of
Yeah,
its money in 2019. It went on to gross $1 billion globally, so I definitely give it a bat cookie.
yeah, Bat cookie. I liked it way more than Wonder Woman.
Bohemian Rhapsody, the biopic about Freddie Mercury from Queen, won Rami Malek an Oscar for playing Freddie Mercury. I enjoyed it. I'm not a huge Queen fan, but I was able to enjoy this movie, so I'll
I
give it
didn't
bat
see it, but
cookie.
I do like Queen, and it seemed like it was doing well, so I'll give it a sensation Bat cookie. I might see it at some point.
A Quiet Place, a movie that I have not seen yet, and I should. Like Ben the Movie Buff talked a lot about this movie when he was on the show. It sounds like one of those films. It's like it's an experience to watch it because of how the movie plays out with its emphasis on silence.
I see. Well, maybe I will. I don't know. I didn't really plan on it, but we'll see. I'll call it a Schrodinger's bat. The bat is in
Okay,
the box. You don't know if it's a cookie or a noogie right now.
Ralph Breaks the Internet.
Heard it was
I
better
was
than the
hyped
first
for.
one.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
There's certain. It's not very original. Like if you've seen any story about people going into the internet, like there's nothing new here.
Right.
I particularly like there's like one part of the movie where they go to like the Disney website and like all the franchises Disney owns are there, and if I could watch that as just a short film, I'd probably just rewatch that. So I'll give
Fair
it
enough.
sensation back
I'll
cookie.
give it sensation back. Okay, I heard it was pretty good.
And we're gonna start talking about some of these movies that are really interesting in how they were popular. So we have Crazy Rich Asians, which got a lot of hype because it was like the highest grossing film ever with an all Asian cast. And again, kind of like Black Panther, obviously on a much smaller scale because the Asian population is a lot smaller in the U.S. It showed that if you make movies with these kind of like with these kind of actors in the lead, people will show up to watch it. So I have yet seen it. I'm sure it's good. Bat
Yeah.
cookie? Question mark.
Bat cookie-ish. I think. I don't know. I haven't heard good things about it per se, but I know it did well. So yeah, let's say bat cookie.
Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald. I have seen this. It did much worse box office wise than the first one, and it just falls apart. Like the finale, it's a bunch of people in a room explaining things to each other, and you're like, wait, what's going on here?
I have no
Um,
interest in Harry Potter or Harry Potter spin-offs, so Bat Noogie.
Bad Noogie. The Meg. So this is another like kind of like niche market, if you will. This is just a movie about a giant shark with Jason Statham.
Oh yeah, it's like short for Megalosaurus or whatever.
Megalodon, I think.
Megalodon? Yeah, I don't understand how that thing. I feel like it's too far away from Sharknado to actually be Sharknado, but I feel like it was almost like that.
Yeah, I'll give it a Bad Noogie.
I'll be a Bat Noogie.
Ready Player One. I enjoyed it, and I'm disappointed it didn't do better financially.
I did not see it, but I I don't know. Again, like the overcrowding of isekai in my life through anime made me less interested in watching this movie. Um, I got weird like Spy Kids 3D vibes from it, and I don't know if that was justified, but I also heard the book was a lot better, so I don't know. I'll give it maybe a sensation back cookie because I've heard good things about it, but I don't think I will actually watch
Bat Cookie. Creed 2, which gave us the spiritual rematch that we were all dying to see.
it.
The son of Apollo Creed fighting the son of the man who killed his father. I have yet to watch it, but I want to, so I'm gonna give it a Bat Cookie.
I'll give it a back cookie too. I've heard mostly good things, and Murnau will probably make me watch it at some point.
To my chagrin, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse
I know.
finished 29th at the box office this year,
I mean,
and it is probably the best Spider-Man movie that's out there.
there's no
And
probably. It is the best Spider-Man movie ever made. Like
the animation is
it's.
incredible, the music's great, the story, like everything about it is
Have you
great.
done an episode on the Bad Jar podcast about it?
Yes, we did.
Okay, because I was gonna say if not, I'd be down for that. No, it's amazing. It deserved to be a lot higher. Even just from the story telling point of view, it deserved to be high up. Like it's a much better story than almost all the movies I see above it. Like it was amazing.
It did win the best animated feature Oscar, so it got a lot of critical acclaim, but
Yes, that's true.
it didn't do well at the box office. So Bat Cookie for sure.
Yeah, Bat Noogie for it not doing well.
Mary Poppins Returns.
Still
We
have
did an
not seen
episode
it.
on this. It it just sort of feels like a nostalgia trip for Mary Poppins, and Emily Blunt's good in the role, but none of the songs really stood out for me. So I'll give it for my mom's sake, she really liked it. I guess I'll give it a two. No, not a nuggie, a thin station Bat Cookie for her.
My mother did not see it, neither did I. I'll give it a Bat Noogie, but a small one. It sounded like it was cute.
Christopher Robin, the live action movie about an adult. It's basically Hook meets Winnie the Pooh. I loved
Those
it.
are two concepts I think should not be together, but that's me personally.
It's great. It's awesome. Ewan McGregor is great in it. Like they got all the great voices in there. I'll give it a Bat Cookie.
Is Pooh still the same?
Yeah, it's still Jim Cummings.
Oh, okay. Wait, is it narrated? Is it narrated by John Cleese?
No.
Then no. I'll take back my sensation. And I was gonna give it and go back to a one knuckle Bat Noogie.
Bumblebee, the Transformers movie that you and I saw in theaters together.
Yes, we did.
I enjoyed it. Like it was better than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Which doesn't say much after last night of like the last Transformers movie we saw.
Yeah. No, it's. I don't think it was. I think it was a good. It was good. It was a step in the right direction for Transformers movies, but I wasn't overwhelmed by it, and there were moments that did seem a little ham-fisted and a little like forced. It's like you should be feeling these emotions now, and
It almost
like
feels more like E.T. or something than a Transformers movie, which
yeah, like it was good, but it could use some polish still. Like I'd still recommend watching it. I don't know if I'd rewatch it.
Pacific Rim Uprising, the sequel to Pacific Rim.
I'd forgotten Pacific Rim had a sequel until I saw it on this list.
It did
That's
not
how
do nearly
memorable
as
it
well as
was.
the first one. Yeah, it finished 51st at the box office. Bat Nuggy.
I think also it was riding on the disappointment of the first one. Yeah, Bat Noogie. It's a concept that could work, and Japan has made it work, but these movies have not.
Teen Titans Go to the Movies finished a 98th place at the box office,
Yeah,
so it didn't do very well.
like I watched it and I expected to dislike it more than I did. Um, no, I actually didn't dislike it, which was odd. Like I don't like Teen Titans Go much, and to be fair though, it did give us the idea that the Teen Titans might come back, and that was super exciting. I think it was a solid movie, and especially like a solid kids movie that wasn't pandering and like just like only kids could enjoy this. Like the Minions movie that there's no way an adult would ever enjoy that movie. Teen Titans Go to the Movie was actually like a good children's movie that would appeal to a broader audience. I'm surprised it didn't do better than that.
Yeah, so I'll give it a bat cookie.
Are we really going to talk about that last one?
Well, Holmes. I just wanted to mention Holmes and Watson finished 110th place at the box office. It was a Sherlock Holmes movie with Will Ferrell and John C. Riley. It did so terribly. I think it got like 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. I think they actually pulled it from theaters because it was
They
so
did.
bad.
It was, yeah. I've only seen clips of it, and I don't know. I don't understand why this movie got greenlit and why it took the form that it took. Like nothing about it makes any sense to have existed. Hugest bat noogie I can.
Yeah, bat nuggy. So looking over 2018 as a whole, this was a year we saw some kind of surprise audiences show up for things with with Roseanne and Black Panther, where people who coming out of the woodwork seemingly showed up to watch TV and go to the movies. But we still saw a strong hold from franchises that have a fan base essentially being in control of what's popular. And I think that says something like again, there's like the nostalgia of franchises kind of coming back, like Devilman or The Incredibles, but then there's also just stuff that has consistently been popular, like Avengers or Call of Duty or NCIS. It's like things people like, and they've kind of found the secret sauce for what people like, and they just keep putting it out, and so therefore people keep consuming it.
And I think it is also kind of like taking risk versus not. I think like things like Pink Panther and Crazy Rich Asian did take a risk and it paid off, and that's good. But you still have the kind of lower risk, higher reward things that are still doing well. But definitely this year, I think if we can take something out of it, is that this is the year I think that's really the major tipping point towards streaming services, for sure.
Yeah,
Especially for
and
TV and even for movies, because the first movie, Netflix movie to get an Oscar was up there as well.
yeah, you said Pink Panther earlier, but I'm sure you meant Black Panther.
I most definitely meant Black Panther because all Pink Panther movies that don't have Peter Sellers are not worth mentioning.
Hamburger. Okay, so we don't have access to our mail this week. We might have some mail. I don't know if we do or not. But beef pork ribs, why don't you remind the people how they can get a hold of us?
All right, if you want to contact the show, you can send us an email at,
batjarpodcast@gmail.com.
or I suppose you can tweet us at,
The Bat Cookie Jar.
and you can subscribe to our show wherever you get your podcast. Please give us a rating in your podcast service app and share our post on social media because we want everyone to join us inside the Bat Jar.
Yeah, so next week, of course, we're going to be talking about nerd and geek culture from 2019, the final year of the decade. And then following that, the week of Easter, we're going to be doing a kind of decade in review, looking back on all the highs and lows and what was the most popular overall for the past decade. So
Yeah, and I was thinking we should probably have a personal top 10 for some of the things.
yeah, that'd be fun.
Yeah.
So
If you want to know what we
Beaver,
think, which we assume you do
yeah.
because you're listening to the podcast.
So it's hard to believe memory lane's kind of coming to a close here, but it's 2019 is a noteworthy year for several reasons. So I'm looking forward, even though it was just last year, it's obviously ended. So we've had a little bit of time now to like think about what the year was like and what was popular and what wasn't. So yeah, come back to the Bad Char podcast next week when we talk about nerd and geek culture from 2019. And until that time, I'm Average Joe.
And I'm Beef Pork Ribs.
Catch you on the flip side.
Wash your hands and practice physical